Gospel legend, Mama, Mosie Burks is gone, and what Tamela Mann just revealed will leave you shattered. For decades, Mama Mosie's voice echoed through the hearts of millions, bringing hope and joy to countless souls. But behind that powerful voice, behind the light and the love she shared with the world, a tragic, heartbreaking truth was unfolding. In her final days, Mosie was left in silence. No calls, no visits, no one, not even those she once considered family, came to her side. Why? Tamela Mann, a fellow gospel icon, is now breaking her silence. Through tears, she reveals the shocking reality of Mama Mosie's last moments, exposing a side of the gospel community that no one saw coming. Why was Mosie abandoned? Why did the people who once called her a sister disappear in her time of need? The truth is more painful and more disturbing than we could have ever imagined. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will shake the foundation of everything we thought we knew about the gospel world. Behind the music, the love, and the reverence, there are stories left untold. Stories that need to be heard. Mama Mosie Burks was more than a name. She was a legend, a voice that shook the heavens. Yet, as the world cheered, a woman who gave so much was left to face her darkest moments alone. This is the story of Mosie's final days, a truth that will leave you heartbroken. The gospel community's and Mosie's own family's unexpected silence. The Tamela Mann's powerful emotional message to the world. The first ever insights from insiders who witnessed it all. And yes, the last words Mosie left behind before she died have left everyone in a state of shock. This goes beyond a simple homage. This is an accountability. The reality you are about to hear is emotional, unvarnished, and long overdue. So fasten your seatbelt. And trust me, this is the real deal. Mama Mosie Burks was not your typical gospel performer. She was royalty in the gospel. Her distinctive voice, gritty, strong, and brimming with Holy Spirit fire, made her the soul of the Mississippi Mass Choir and, as a result, a household name in churches and communities all over the world. Songs like I'm Not Tired Yet and When I Rose This Morning weren't only performances. They were musically wrapped testimonials and statements of faith. However, Mosie gradually lost her prominence as time went on and newer voices grabbed center stage. Silently, her health deteriorated and the industry she helped create muted her presence. People thought she was just having fun in retirement. They were unaware of Mosie's silent bodily, mental, and spiritual anguish. Mosie spent her last months hardly visited, according to family insiders. She was now confined to a quiet room, largely alone, where she had once been surrounded by churchgoers, choir members, pastors, and fans. Those who used to be on stage applauding next to her appeared to vanish when she most needed consolation, and even family visits became few. In tears, one neighbor, who wished to remain anonymous, recounted, "There were weeks where no one showed up. No one. She would simply sit by her window and gaze out, expecting to spot a familiar face." Isn't it difficult to imagine? A woman who gave a lot yet received very little in return. This was more than just a medical condition. This had to do with emotional desertion. And Tamela Mann's sadness was caused by precisely this. But that's where it starts to fall apart. So we'll get to that. Mosie had no significant memorials during her lifetime, no viral gospel campaigns, and no fundraising initiatives to help her medical treatment or mental health, despite her notoriety and accolades. Where were her peers? Where was the gospel family when she needed them the most? Is a question that many admirers are now asking online. But here's the part they don't want you to know. Following the announcement of Mama Mosie Burks' death, tributes flooded social media. Clips of her legendary performances, tearful worship sessions, and the way her voice could melt even the hardest hearts were shared by fans. However, the Tamela guy was slow to speak. She remained remarkably silent. Then suddenly, in a recent interview with a gospel podcast, Tamela lost it all. She eventually spoke, her voice shaking and tears running down her cheeks. "No one else said it, so I waited for them to. So I will immediately. Neither Mama Mosie nor I deserve to be left alone." Grief wasn't the only thing involved. It was about feeling abandoned, angry, and guilty. Few people were aware of what Tama revealed. During her last year, she had made multiple attempts to see Mama Mosie. However, family members had become aloof, limiting access, and some even allegedly dissuaded gospel colleagues from attending, according to Tamela. Tamela claimed that they insisted she was too exhausted to receive guests. But what do you know? She wasn't tired of love. She was tired of being neglected. Then Tamela drew a startling comparison to her own experience. She said that even she felt abandoned following decades of success with Tyler Perry and David Mann's productions, not by admirers, but by those she used to refer to as her church family. In my own life, I experienced similar feelings at times. I was abandoned, disregarded, and invisible by the very people I used to worship, sing, and serve God with. And it rekindled wounds Tamela believed had healed when she learned that Mosie, a spiritual mother to many, including herself, had died feeling forgotten. She wasn't finished yet. Tama continued by criticizing the performative mourning that erupted on social media as soon as Mosie's passing became widely known. "You guys are crying on the internet. But where were you when she was crying by alone in that room?" she inquired. "We can't make up for what we didn't do when she was still alive by posting old videos." That was a powerful statement. It was more than a simple call. It served as a warning. Tamela's statements went viral in the days after her tearful interview, particularly in the church and gospel groups. She received a lot of support from admirers who praised her courage. However, not everyone was on board. According to some gospel insiders, she was attempting to make a private tragedy into a public spectacle, reviving old wounds or igniting division. Tamela, however, was not going to back down. She shared a terrifying remark that made her think of Mosie on her own page. "While you are in the coffin, everyone will chant your praises, but when you are still alive, they will dismiss your cries." She claimed that this was the main cause of her sadness. Mosie didn't simply pass away. Before she died, she was forgotten. The rifts in the gospel community were suddenly exposed in this instant. Fans started to doubt everything. Why didn't the public show support for Mosie during her last days? Why was she ignored in recent years by prominent gospel events? What other legends are now going through quiet suffering? However, this is when the narrative becomes even more sinister. Fans from all around the world began to pay their respects to Mama Mosie Burks as word of her passing spread like wildfire. Churches honored her with spontaneous praise breaks. Her famous Mississippi Mass choir solos were included in old footage that went viral once more. For those closest to Mosie, however, her death was not only sorrowful but also unsettling. There was more to Mosie's death than anyone knew, according to a retired hospice nurse who provided care for her in her last weeks. She disclosed that Mosie had written a private letter hidden in her Bible and requested that it be read after her death, but only if the truth wasn't being exposed. She spoke anonymously out of concern for criticism, and no one was telling the truth. Although the complete contents of the letter, which is purportedly currently in the possession of a close spiritual confidant, have not been made public, damaging sections have been leaked. Let them know that stillness does not equate to tranquility if they claim that I was at peace after I have returned home to glory. I missed you all. I waited. I was lonely, yet I forgave. My folks did not support me, but God did. Take a moment to process that. Mosie Burks, who sung for decades about happiness, tenacity, and the goodness of the Lord, waited for a knock on the door, a call, a friend, or a visit in her last days rather than for fame or health. Even worse, a number of well-known gospel leaders who performed with her, gave her praise, and even recognized her at award events never showed up or even called. None of them have publicly reacted, but their names are being whispered in private gospel circles. The event has been dubbed the betrayal of a legend by some supporters. Others claim that it just reflects the way the industry views its elders, who are honored while they are helpful and ignored when they are ill or elderly. This line, however, was arguably the most tragic part of Mosie's farewell statement. "I cried for them in private, but they will scream aloud for me in public. I simply wish they were aware." Consider that. A woman who dedicated her life to music and the church, silently pleading for someone to show that they still cared. And some of the greatest figures in the gospel industry have yet to comment. We preach unity, but where was it? We shouted about the community from pulpits, but where was it? That one note struck Tama like a freight train. According to the same leaked paper, Mosie wrote, "Tell Tamela one heard her song when the nurse played it. Take me to the king. That's exactly what I asked him to do." She said in a heartfelt follow-up Instagram post, "I just wish I could have sat with her one more time. I would have sung for her, not to perform, but to comfort." Meanwhile, online followers and gospel insiders have begun to pressure well-known figures to speak out. Others have been disturbingly quiet. Others have offered ambiguous rest in peace posts. But Mosie's suffering has not been acknowledged. Mosie is no longer the only focus of this. It serves as a warning to the whole gospel community. A storm was subtly building as the aftermath of Mama Mosie Burks' death started to settle, not in the tabloids, but behind the stained glass windows of America's gospel institutions, in choir lofts, and in church seats. Tension replaced the whispers. Outrage replaced the tension. The gospel community, which was renowned for its strong unity and sound, was suddenly showing signs of spiritual fracture. Abandonment was the name given to that fracture. In order to fill venues, move people, and define what gospel really meant, the gospel industry had long relied on icons like Mosie Burks. What occurs, though, when such legends age? They are strategically and silently forgotten when they are unable to perform, sing, or make viral videos. Internal conflicts about how to pay tribute to aging icons like Mosie had been intensifying, according to those close to the Mississippi Mass Choir and a few independent gospel performers. The creation of retirement support funds was advocated by several. Others supported advancing with new, marketable talent. For the most part, the latter prevailed. When she stood up during a live-streamed gospel event and spoke to the elephant in the sanctuary, a Tamil guy revealed this in her tragic cry to action. We cannot continue to ignore our elders while preaching love. That isn't God. That's business. Furthermore, gospel was never intended to come before business. The room became quiet as her voice broke. There was no performance. It was a heartfelt weep. However, not everyone embraced Tamela's message. Her remarks apparently alarmed a number of influential gatekeepers in the business, including senior pastors and well-known gospel promoters. She was accused by some of disclosing personal information in public. As one person put it, "This ain't TMZ fans watching from home, however, we're aware of the irony. This is church. We don't do scandal here." They were aware of the reality. The scandal is silence. Tamela wasn't by herself either. A younger generation of gospel musicians, like Corin Hawthorne, Jonathan McReynolds, and even Leandrea Johnson, started echoing her cries shortly after her impassioned address. They demanded the creation of an official gospel legacy council with the responsibility of providing financial, emotional, and spiritual care to senior gospel legends. Choir members and retiring artists receive routine wellness checkups in order to ensure that veterans like Mosie never feel forgotten again. Transparent mentorship programs would match them with younger voices. However, the gap persisted despite the increased support. A remark that went viral on the internet was from a retired gospel singer who worked with Mosie in the 90s. There are people who built their names off Mosie's fire, but when her flame grew dim, they moved on like she was never part of their journey. This is a gospel tragedy. We need to do better. The church let her down, according to the deluge of comments. Why do we show our concern only after they pass away? Tamela asked herself the question in a recent interview. I don't want flowers to be brought too late at another funeral. Now is the moment to love. Now is the time to view our legends. She's now planning what she calls the Remembered Summit, a live gathering to honor living gospel superstars. Give them their bouquets, and make sure no one else becomes like Mosie, all while they still remember our names. This is the most potent portion though. Even though Mosie's story is over, it could be the reason that another great gospel figure is spared the same fate. Even though Mama Mosie Burks is now dead, her legacy lives on. Her stillness during those last days is actually speaking louder than ever, reverberating through every church, gospel live stream, and soul that used to cry to her song. Fans, leaders, and even skeptics are being forced to consider how we treat our legends in life, as well as in death, by her narrative. Accepting that someone who brought so much joy to others could have experienced loneliness is heartbreaking. However, suffering can occasionally give rise to the most potent legacies, and whether she intended to or not, Mosie Burks forced a reckoning that the gospel community sorely needed. There has been a discernible change in the gospel sector after the public protest by a Tamil guy. Every month, a number of musicians visit or contact retiring legends as part of their gospel family check-in initiatives. While they are still alive to observe, churches are starting to erect legacy walls honoring the lives of senior gospel members. Tamela and David Mann recently established an independent fund called Mosie's Table, which aims to give elderly gospel pioneers who have been neglected by the sector they helped establish food, medical care, and company. Furthermore, it goes beyond philanthropy. The goal is to mend the rift because gospel music has been mired in a paradox for far too long, preaching love and unity while letting some of its most devoted followers drift into seclusion. That mirror was forced back onto the community by Mosie's life and death. What would Mosie think of all this, though? During her memorial service, one of her long-standing choir members shared this reflection. Mosie would prefer that we not cry for too long. In addition to wanting us to live better, sing louder, and love louder, she would also want us to perform better for the next Mosie. For the people who remain, the most painful thing is that, because there are dozens of Moses out there at the moment, as the world celebrates their previous accomplishments, elderly gospel singers, musicians, and choir members live in silence and are gradually being forgotten. And this agonizing cycle will continue unless something changes. This is why this tale is important. You're watching now for that reason. This goes beyond a simple death. It's about the kind of love we give to living people. Therefore, let's make a change now. Make Mosie's name stand out more in our deeds as well as in our music selections. Let every post about resting in peace be accompanied by a note asking how someone who could be forgotten is doing today. And thanks to Mama Mosie. You had angelic vocals, you led a servant's life, and like a prophet, you went. The world spoke because of your last quiet. We now swear that we shall never forget. Don't scroll away if this tale moved you. To commemorate Mama Mosie's life, watch this video, share your favorite Mosie Burks song or recollection in the comments section below. Together, let's construct a wall of remembering. Tell someone who needs to hear this in the gospel community. Above all, subscribe to receive more undiscovered tales and realities that the industry doesn't always tell. While they are still able to smell them, let's give our legends their flowers.